My name is Lori Schmidt, the Wolf Curator for the International Wolf Center, and I'd like to welcome you to the full moon. It is a full moon tonight, the full moon webinar. And so you've been watching the pack holding area, which is where the pups currently spend the evening hours. They are still going in and out of the Wolf Care Center, so that's where they've been sleeping, but we are starting to get them more acclimated to outdoor temperatures. Most of their beds have been washed and stored for the next pup introduction. We don't want anything out there that they can, in the middle of the night, shred and might cause any issues of consuming, some of the stuffing or bedding and things. And so I, again, want to welcome everybody. And we will continue to run the webinars kind of the same way. If you have a question, go ahead and type it into the chat. Or the Q&A. I can do either. So I think the chat is just kind of more or less just comments that you have to make about the webinar that you want to share with everyone. The Q&A is more where I will look for questions to answer. So feel free to chat away. If you see something of interest that you want to identify or you want to share with someone, that's great. I see a lot of greetings from Gainesville, Florida, from Virginia, from Colorado. So we really welcome everybody. And I know time frame wise, this is a 7 p.m. webinar. And so we have this webinar at this time because the pups are still kind of acclimating to warmer weather without a lot of guard hairs. And so that means that they get kind of warm and they tend to like to stay down during the heat of the day. So we are doing this webinar a little bit later for the pups. So what I have is a little bit of clips, and I will let the staff know that we're going to switch on so they don't have to continue to entertain the pups, and we'll come back to them a little bit later. So I'm going to switch to video, and then I'm going to share a few perspectives on some things that happened today. And so what I mean by that is we let the pups see Rika in this pack holding area space this morning. So I will share some of that video as well. So basically, a couple of things about the full moon and the idea of what the influences of the full moon and does it make wolves howl, and, the whole kind of idea of the effect, the lunar effect on a lot of other wildlife, especially marine mammals, is certainly something that has been interesting, to research and to see what studies have gone on up there. But from the most part, for wolves, the reality is howling is a communication. It's a communication to rally the pack. It's a communication to get them stimulated to hunt. It's a communication to defend territory. So the fact that we as humans are probably more likely to be out during a full moon because it's brighter, it's a landscape that we can see a little bit more and might put us in closer proximity or in closer opportunity to be able to hear wolves howl. So probably, again, a little bit of a myth about wolves. And so we're going to start. I'm going to share basically my desktop and then be able to handle some of those myths a little bit, but I really want to focus on the introduction because that's such a big part of what we're doing here today is talking about the introduction. So this image that you're seeing is from Dan Smith. He is a Minnesota artist, and he painted this called Moon Song. And I'm going to play on the back side of the Moon Song a clip of the pups howling, Blackstone and Kaz howling. And I know Dan Smith quite well because Dan was a painter who had been at my house. This is actually a painting of Balazar. Balazar was a wolf from the 1989 litter, and Dan did a painting of Balazar, Basha, and Jedediah that he had available for sale in some of his studios here in Minnesota. But I think one of the things that I always appreciate about howling is the fact that you can have multiple individuals changing pitches so frequently that it makes it sound like there's more wolves than there really are. And so with that short little clip of the pups, you heard, just really Kaz and Blackstone, yet it sounded like 3 or 4 different pups. And I know it wasn't a loud audio, but I can certainly play it again for you a little bit later. But that changing and pitching, changes in octaves. Again, if you look at wolves have a territorial defense, that means size matters. How many individuals you have might mean the difference between maintaining territory or losing territory to a fellow pack. It does make ecological sense that they have that opportunity. So, like I said, I'll talk a little bit about the introduction, and then I want to share a few things, and I'm going to try to keep up with the Q&A so we don't get too far behind. And yes, Tony, this is being recorded, so I will then archive this footage. Sorry, I don't have a nervous twitch. I have a mosquito in my face here, but I will archive this footage, and I will share it about probably it'll be a couple days now, because we are going to continue to do Rika introductions with the pups every morning. So things are going to get a little bit busy here as we go forward. So I will share that and be able to add more information and more resources that may be necessary to be able to help people kind of comprehend what we're doing here. So, like I said, introduction is a big part of what we do. We do not breed wolves here. We've started with wolves in 1989. So we've always been a place that takes wolves from other USDA facilities, adopts wolves at a young age, and then be able to integrate them into the pack. So we spend a lot of time monitoring behavior, interpreting behavior, looking at body language, and trying to get a reflection of how an introduction is going to go based on the behaviors that we see. And so in this particular clip here, this is, again, also part of that communication is the howling. But we also look at things like body postures. And so one thing we have been noticing recently is that we've been noticing Grayson doing quite a bit more posturing over Axel. And again, if you're not familiar with how to tell them apart, one key thing here is Axel's precaudal tail gland. This is this tail gland at the base of his tail is not very dark compared to Grayson. Grayson's precaudal tail gland, as you're walking away from, is much darker. And also Grayson has kind of a little darker spot on the middle of his muzzle. His eyes are more roundish. His head is a little bit broader versus Axel being kind of more of a thinner ski slope kind of face. The muzzle is very straight. Important if you are interested in being on our behavioral team, which we are going to talk about at the end. We're going to try to host an on-site behavioral team that monitors the pup's introduction, as well as a virtual team. So watching behaviors, hackles means something. That's the hair that is raising at the back of the neck. There's hackles on Grayson, start of hackles on Axel. Again, anxieties can increase. Howling, again, can increase, especially with the pups, wanting to get a sense of the pups being involved in the pack dynamics. This clip is from 4th of July. And you can hear the fireworks gives Kaz a little bit of a start. But what he does is he runs into the Wolf Care Center, and you can see the big industrial fan that's used to keep the bugs off of them. That's going to go away here as we condition them to get used to living outdoors. But the deer fawn was something new. Prior to that, they'd only had deer legs, so they really didn't have a whole carcass to feed on. And even though the 4th of July fireworks are really loud and could cause them some anxiety, the fact that there was a distraction for the pups meant that they could go ahead and focus on the food and not focus on the noise. So that's what we call positive conditioning, and we try to have positive items when we know things are going to be fearful for them. So the wolves tend to be very neophobic, and neophobic basically means fear of new things. And so we always make sure that we have a ready supply of distractions available to them. We did have a program for Working for Wolves in the third weekend of June, and that program was really focused on bringing distractions, creating distractions, and did a great job. And we are still using some of those distractions today. As a matter of fact, the hide that you saw Kim and Jen dragging around the pack holding area came from that Working for Wolves program. So those are very, very important to us. And so we will continue to use distractions like that. And that was going to really be helpful to get the pups through some anxiety. So the Wolf Care Center is where they hang out. And so the staff are still sleeping on overnights. But what I'm asking the staff to do is to always keep their eye on them, even if the pups are supposed to be out in the yard. Wherever they go, people need to go. And the reason why, if you're watching what Blackstone's doing here, he got into the pens and basically took the cup off the wall. So they're getting taller, they're getting into more issues and more challenges. And so we never leave them unattended. If they are unattended, they're going to be in an outdoor environment that has no human items. So no beds, no pillows, no toys, no cups. That cup was in the Wolf Care Center as part of the people keeping track of data, people keeping track of food and that kind of thing. So with that said, that is a change for the pups, and we want them to have a period of time before the introduction where they can adapt to that change, so that it's not just an abrupt change when they go in with the adults. So now what I'm going to feature is just to give you a sense of what some of the other pups that have been introduced here. And again, we've been here since 1989. We had a litter in 89. We then started with a whole new set of wolves in 1983, because 89 was just a temporary exhibit. And the wolves would come back to my house, and every time they came back to the center, they were more and more phobic about the human component. So I was charged with the task of finding them alternative homes, while the 1993 permanent exhibit, full-time 1.25 acre exhibit was built, and it started with new wolves in 1993. So the first time we did an introduction of non-related pups was in June. In June 30th, 2000 is when Shadow Malik came, and these two wolves were raised by our, at that time, board member Nancy Gibson, and raised them in the Twin Cities. Then they came to Ely, and they essentially had their first meeting with the adults through the fence. And this is the same pack holding area gate that you'll see continually used in our exhibits. But you can see how much older the pups were. When they came in, it was August that we let them in. You can see them quite a bit larger, and you can see them meeting the adult wolves. And there we are with Nancy and Dave Meach. And we knew at that time that the introduction was going to be very successful, because Mackenzie, the dominant female, was showing very strong caregiving behavior, but also Lucas, the dominant male, was very accommodating to the pups, letting the pups eat first. And here he's just kind of doing classic wolf behavior, which is a little antagonistic, giving a little bit of a foreleg stab. And really it looked like more entertainment for Lucas than it was for the pups. Obviously Shadow was pretty irritated with it, but if you watch, Lucas goes over and blocks the Lakota from coming over. So he's actually guarding the pups. We're seeing that now with Rika and Grayson actually guarding the pups at the fence from Axel. And that's been something that's kind of been going on. And in the year 2000, those two wolves grew up, Shadow and Malik, and we introduced the Maya and Grizzer as pups, and then their cousin Nisa, who was a week younger. And within 9 months, Shadow and Maya pair bonded and became the dominant pair. And so the interesting thing about this particular introduction is that you will probably see with Rika her start to pair bond, and she's already kind of starting some affiliative behavior where she's really often going to Grayson, lying closer to Grayson, and Grayson is choosing to lie next to her, and having that kind of really strong behavior. So then that litter grew up, and in 2008 we brought in Denali and Aiden, and you can see Shadow was still the pack leader. Shadow was the pack leader from the year 2002 until 2010. So we had an 8-year reign as the pack leader, which is a pretty strong length of time. And Shadow, very subordinate to the pups. But as soon as the pups start to be a little bit more disrespectful, climbing on them, and as soon as another adult wolf came over, then he starts to assert dominant rank there pretty intensively, and showing that kind of posture. And then Shadow retired in 2010, and Aiden grew up, and he became the pack leader. And in 2012, Aiden welcomed in Luna and Bolts. And so Luna did have some medical issues. Bolts was a nice, healthy pup. And I wanted to say about Bolts was that Bolts was 51 pounds when he was introduced into the pack in 2012. So I really feel like Blackstone, who is just hitting 40 pounds, and Kaz, who's about 37 pounds, that's not a problem that they're that size prior as we come up to the introduction. The introduction is likely to happen in the next 2 weeks, and we've got some logistical things to deal with. We've got again some kind of pre-introduction work that we're doing right now, but it's really not a problem for him to be a little bit bigger. Bigger than 50, that's a little bit of an issue because obviously then they're going to be kind of more adult size and they're going to be more of a competitor than they are going to be a pack member. So Luna and Bolts did quite well. Aiden and Denali, again, the four of them had a great pack existence. And then in 2016 is when we got Axel and Grayson. And so we had a pattern of every 4 years. That's typically what we did. Luna was the dominant female. She was the only female. And that's something that we have as a philosophy. We do try to just manage one female at a time. And that's based on some experience that we had in 2005 when we lost Nisa and had some other facilities review our management circumstance and really gave us the recommendation to really just focus on one female. And part of that is because females have a tendency to be a little bit more dominant. The theory is anyways that in the wild, that dominant, that females, especially in areas where food resources are fairly limited, that females may control what other females are breeding based on dominance. So they might be aggressive towards the other females, that might be posturing around a male that might, be interested in mating. And so it becomes a little bit more challenging to work with females. And so that's just kind of a theory that was based again by several different facilities that looked at our management and made that suggestion. So here we are in 2016. You can see the same gate, quite a bit different. Obviously, every time you look at wolf care, we always are improving. Our goal has always been learn from the past, make every decision based on decisions that we made in the past that may have been challenges or may have been successes, and build on those and always improve the facilities for the next generation. And so Grayson and Axel came to us from Canada. They were 23 days old when they got here. So they were a little bit older, a little bit more timid. Certainly, I think Kaz and Blackstone didn't come. We didn't meet them until they were 34 days old. So they were actually older than Axel and Grayson, but they are acclimating quite well, and they seem to be a little bit more tolerant of the human component than Axel and Grayson were. And so here we are with Luna being the dominant female, doing a lot of what Reich is doing, and showing a lot of focus, whining at the fence. But what was different is Luna's intensity is different. So remember I said that in our job, the idea of reading behaviors and reading body language is so critical. Luna shows a little bit more ears pricked forward and a little bit more what we call whale eyes, kind of like very large, staring and more of an obsession than more than the curiosity that Rika has. Now, granted, Luna was older. She's obviously, these are 4-year introductions. So she's a 4-year-old where Luna is just a 1-year-old. So there may be something different with that. But we also knew that Luna had some nutritional challenges when she was younger. So that means that, she may not have developed as well as an animal who had full complement of nutrition. But the other thing that we knew that Luna had some physical abnormalities that created her some weaknesses and that caused her some challenges if other wolves touched her leg, especially she had a plate in her leg from the time she was a month of age. So we knew that there was something that might relate to how Luna would be tractable to the pup. So before the introduction, we do very diligent work in having a lot of time next to the fence. And you can see here, we're trying to kind of calm her down with some body work. It took us several hours that morning in the 2016. And you could see wolf care staff have Y poles. Y poles are to help to help hold an animal up against the fence. So the Y kind of goes around their neck if we have to separate them, if there's any kind of issues. And we're seeing Luna tail wagging at the fence, but but still fixating, and we weren't going to let her touch the pups until we could uh, really try to reduce that fixation that she was having. So the same space that I'm going to show you as far as what Rika went through is what where Luna and all the introductions actually to this point have been done. So you can see the pups patiently waiting, very calm, actually, Axel and Grayson, but it didn't work out. When we finally got Luna together with the pups, she went after Axel and she had him in a compromising position, and he was kind of letting out a really pup scream to the point where I needed to physically remove Luna from him. And then I went about going through the introduction with just Aiden as the pack leader. And so those are decisions that we make at the time. And that's why it was really important, because Luna was the only female. And so we wanted to make sure that Rika, as the only female, that there wasn't something related to, again, that circumstance. So that carried with Axel and Grayson, that kind of challenging first introduction carried with them into the exhibit, some anxiety, some fear avoidance, and certainly some tuck tail quite a bit, and we're needing a lot of reassurance. So one thing that we did is, after their introduction, we left the medical pen or the pack holding area open so they could come and go. And that's Grayson kind of hiding under my chair, not really wanting to come out. Aiden being extremely caregiving, a lot of whining, certainly a lot of approaching. And I left that gate open so that Grayson could feel comfortable coming out. And it was Aiden who really made Grayson feel part of that exhibit. And so we saw Denali not as caregiving. This is Axel as a young pup. He discovered that Denali liked food, and he liked food. And so they just kind of hung out together. And Bolts, again, being the middle ranking wolf, was investigatory, but certainly not threatening to the pups. So, but Grayson carried with a lot of anxiety, and that anxiety, like I said, was a needy thing. We kept having to reassure him that he was going to be okay. His brother reassured him, being able to lie down with his brother and have a physical paw on him was very, very important. So these are social animals. They're social carnivores. Everything about them speaks to that social nature. So it is with these lessons that brought us to where we are today. And what we want to continue to observe is, how are the boys interacting with each other? Is there one who's a little bit more intimidated than another? And you can kind of see here, and I've got other pictures of it, Grayson has a little bit more weepy eyes than Axel did as pups. Aiden had a little more weepy eyes than Denali did as pups. Shadow had a little more weepy eyes than Malik did as pups. And now Blackstone has a little bit more weepy eyes than Kaz does as a pup. And so I think there's something to be said about those pups that carry a little bit more anxiety, that it does affect their immune system. So we definitely want to watch that. And we want to make sure that those more anxiety ridden kind of pups feel comfortable and feel part of the pack. So all of that is the history that brings us to where we are today, which is trying to get this 2022 litter as part of the exhibit pack, trying to integrate them into the pack. And so, like I said, this is something that we've done since the year 2000, bringing in pups, but every pup litter is different. Every individual is different. Every relationship they have is different. How they support each other, how they behave is important. And so the other thing, and I wanted to bring this up in case some of you are not familiar with what happened. The day of the pup introduction was the day that we retired Luna. And Luna was brought into the Wolf Care Center. And after all of the stress that the pups went through, we had to help Luna kind of process the change within her life. And that change did include coming out of the pack. And so obviously this is fresh in our minds because, we didn't want to have a repeat performance with Rika, and we knew that we wouldn't, but we wanted to make sure. And that's why we kind of went forward today and started this introduction with just Rika, just to ensure that we didn't have a similar issue. And like I said, I think, you can never be sure what causes animals anxiety and what causes animals to be threatened or to be redirecting. But I think for Luna, it was after what we witnessed and after what we learned about her medical condition, we think it was a real proactive approach for Luna to not have the pups jump on her, to not have the pups possibly injure her. And so she went after them. I don't think there's any changing that. Rika is a healthy young 1 year old. There's nothing to indicate that Rika has any issues. And clearly, as you will see with the video that I'm about to show you here today, it was a lot of activity, and Rika managed to deal with it quite well. So for Luna, though, it was the start of retirement. Now, Luna, this was when she was 4. Luna did succumb to cancer when she was 7. So we certainly, don't know if there was any other pre-existing health conditions that contributed to that issue. But what we did with Luna is, because she was so young when she went into retirement, is we worked really diligently to try to integrate her with Grizzer. Grizzer was our sole retirement member at that time. And even though they had not met, it's one of the few times we got 2 adult wolves together. That's normally doesn't happen very often. It can happen in the Red Wolf and the Mexican Wolf Project when they're moving wolves around for the reproductive studies. But for us in a socialized captive environment, we didn't, hadn't really done that. But we certainly were successful in doing that with Luna and Grizzer. So bringing you to the current day, this is this morning. And so this is the same pack holding area you were just watching. There was Rika, and she was very excited. We had a lot of staff in there, and so you're going to see a little bit of bouncy footage just as it was taken this morning. You can see the pups waiting. That's Blackstone and Kaz waiting with the wolf care staff. One of the people who were on overnight, and then the rest of us came in, and then we let the pups out, and you can see some pretty excited pups. So I apologize then if you're, a little motion sickness, but there was a lot of motion going on here this morning. So they're chasing and chasing and chasing, and Rika's getting a little bit overwhelmed. And so I was in with Grayson and Axel just to make sure that they weren't having too many issues. And so as I was watching from the other side of the fence, I talked to the wolf care staff who were in there and said, let's try to maybe distract one of the pups, or let's try to, maybe help Rika, maybe be her backup. And so the wolf care staff are just kind of working, trying to see if they can slow down the pups a little bit. It was pretty apparent they wanted to see Rika. They were excited to see Rika, but this was kind of overwhelming. So what I did is I came back over. We managed to get the pups separated, and then one-on-one, Rika was able to deal with it. And so Rika was interested. She was sniffing. So we now have one pup on one side of the fence and the other pup on this side. And so Kaz was first, and Kaz submitted. He was calmer, and they were easily distracted with food. And that's a good thing. And then Rika, obviously, pretty saliva ridden because she just had 2 pups chasing all over, trying to food beg her, is coming over to the staff and getting some reassurance while we're giving out some venison cakes to the pups. And I also had some lamb chops that were donated to us that they really like. So having food resources, again, there's Kaz. You can tell Kaz is lighter face. He's a little bit stockier. So when you look at his legs, he looks very, very muscular. And he is doing all the right things. He's no longer reinforced by his brother, with that jumping and grabbing. He's being a little bit more respectful, running along, food begging, which is what puppies do, licking the sides of the face. And Rika is able to manage. Then we let Blackstone out again, and then it starts up again. We are trying to see if they had a little bit of a break, are they going to, not be so rammy? And so then what we did was we put Kaz in and just watched her interact with Blackstone, and same kind of thing. Blackstone was a little bit needier. He did a little more of what we call obnoxious submission and not dropping to the ground as quick. Kaz is pretty confident, so for him to roll over and drop to the ground, he doesn't really care as much. Blackstone is a little bit more intimidated by things, so he was really eagerly what we call obnoxious submission, just licking and licking and licking and licking. Rika did regurgitate, and it was Blackstone actually ended up consuming it. And so I think a lot of that was because of his overexuberance and excitement. She did not do any overt dominance. She did not physically kind of bite them or grab them, but you see she's trying to do a soft
Oh, there we
muzzle
go.
bite and she pushes him down with her leg
She rolled
in a
it.
submissive posture. So she understands it, even though she didn't have a litter mate to really practice. I mean, these two are rolling each other over on a regular basis. They're pinning each other. They're rolling each other. I mean, they're growling. They're food defensing.
Doing
Reka didn't have any of that. So for her to really learn how to do that and be good at it, I think these pups will take a little bit of time. So like I said, we then left both of them out, just try to see if she could deal with it a little bit more, if they could calm down a little bit more. We're going to continue to do this again tomorrow. We'll continue to do it again on Friday. And the hope is the more frequency we have in this introduction, like we saw here today with time, that they got calmer. There was one moment where Rika had a tucked tail that was initially where it was a little overwhelming to her, but otherwise she keeps a fairly relaxed tail. Never a T2, which is more of the kind of threatening attack tail, straight back, and never a T1 in aggressive arousal over the back. So that was a really a good sign for us. And these pups are about half her size, so when they are standing next to her, it's definitely um, telling us that, this is the right time to start working on this introduction. So we are still tentatively hoping for the last week of August, or sorry, of June, or July. We are looking at probably the 27th or 28th,
Do a little photoshopping.
but it will be dependent upon how things go tomorrow. If these pups are ready to go, um, we do have a few things we'd like to work with them yet,
Getting closer to me.
because they were a little bit older when they came to us. We want to make sure that they're very tractable. They had a vaccination today, that went well. We want to make sure that they're willing to allow us to do medical care. So that's why we want to maybe make sure that we have an ample amount of time to spend with them. But we also know that the sooner they get in the pack, the sooner Grayson can help Rika. So we didn't bring Grayson in today because we're dealing with how Axel's going to react. We're not quite at that point yet to bring Axel into this mix. Maybe another 2 or 3 visits, Grayson can come in with Rika, and then the two of them can maybe work on dominating a little bit. Certainly, the pups need a little bit of dominance, and there's no doubt Rika trying to do it by herself got a little bit overwhelming. So we wanted to make sure that she could manage that, and that's why, like I said, I've got some meat in my hands, and I'm just trying to
We
get the
did that in
pups
this
to
10 minutes.
take that meat and
Get the
be
meat to figure out.
a little less focused on Rika. So the good thing was we could distract them with meat. That wasn't something that I was really certain about when I was really, in the middle of it. But yeah, they were pretty quick to go to lamb chops, and we'll have probably some pork ribs or something tomorrow, something a little bit bigger. Why I'm holding it so tight is because these were cut into very small chunks, and I didn't want them to swallow it. They could tear the meat off the bone, but I didn't want them to have the meat, and so that makes it a little bit more challenging. And when you can't give them something that they can take off and go deal with. So that's Kaz rolling over there for Reika. Again, Kaz very comfortable, has no problem being in full submission, very confident pup. A confident pup is willing to submit. An anxious pup is nervous about submission. Grayson was the same way when he was pup. Aiden was the same way when he was a pup. Just was a little bit more uneasy, and a little bit more needy, wanting that kind of reassurance before he goes on in submission. So that's why we started our morning. That was going on 12 hours ago now. And Rika, like I said, did quite well with this period of time. And we probably had her out by 9 in the morning. So we started around 8:15 and then had her back out again at 9 o'clock. We did have a lot of things in store for her. Rika does like to go back in the building. So she got an opportunity this morning to go back in the building when the pups were kind of busy. We also had a visitor, John Ver, who has really built, with his generosity, has built these retirement areas through his donations. John and his wife Donna originally started the retirement village in the year 2002 when Shadow and Malik pretty much retired the entire 1993 litter. So I knew John was coming to visit. John and his daughter were going to be here. And so Rika really likes spending time at the fence with John. So we had made it as a plan that we would let John or let Rika come over and visit John. And so you'll see me opening the gate, and Rika got to come in and see John. Of course, a puppy slipped by. I only wanted Rika in there. Of course, two puppies slipped by. And so then I had to just rearrange wolves. And so the good thing was is that they're willingly to come in and out of these smaller areas. Rika actually went in the building. So did both pups go into the building in the Wolf Care Center. But the good thing was that they're so comfortable in this pack holding area that it allows us to be able to use these multiple gates. So you see a lot of different gates, and that allows me to move animals and separate them. So Rika needed a little bit of break, so she went to go see John at the fence. And that was very reassuring to her. Then she also went in the building and started to take the sheets off the bed. So we had to modify it a little bit and close the building up. But basically, it gave Rika a break, and that's what we really needed. You can see the pups are still there, focused. They want to see her. Their tails are wagging. This is a good, positive first experience for those pups. So we were pretty excited about how things went, and really look forward to the addition of these two pups in the exhibit pack. I think they're going to bring a lot of life to the exhibit pack. This is why we do pups, is to bring life to the exhibit pack. Also, to take the focus off the older wolves. So Axel and Grayson are 6, and as 6-year-olds, we certainly are in a circumstance where anything can happen. I mean, we lost Luna at 7, and so Rika, being a 1-year-old, we certainly don't want her to be with a pair of 6-year-olds and then find out something happens to them within a year or two. And so that prompted us to say, we probably need to put pups in now when Rika's a year of age. First of all, like you see, she didn't have the kind of roughhousing, playhousing, or playmates that Kaz and Blackstone are to each other. Rika was a singleton, so she didn't have a lot of that. So being 1 years old, she's going to get that chance to play, and she wants to play. There's several times a day that the educators say that she tries to start playing with Grayson, and Grayson will usually maybe play for a little bit and then give her a little bit of a discipline and then walk, and then go up the hill or walk away. Axel kind of plays a little bit, but then gets pretty rough with her. These puppies are going to bring Rika back to her puphood where she didn't have this kind of roughhousing. And granted, again, I'm blocking Rika so she can go in and see John. And you can see her just calm right down. She goes up to the fence. She's tail wagging. She really enjoys that time. It gave her a little bit of a break, but yet she still comes over to see the pups. And so these are all really, really good signs that I think things are going to go well once we get this introduction underway. So with that said, I'm going to kind of keep that playing. And I've got a couple of comments here. Marine Black says Rika's nurturing behavior will most likely mimic Mackenzie's after their introduction. I agree. And I did see something, and Dave Meach and I've talked about this. There's something called hugging that Wolf Park first talked about when wolves, and Mackenzie was doing it, was grabbing those pups and putting her paws around them. There's several times Kelly Godfrey was taking still photographs where you see the paw of Rika, and I've seen Rika do it since she was probably 6 months old to Grayson, a little bit more of a kind of a domineering fashion, which she would grab Grayson and start kind of muzzle biting him. But it is a behavior that I think is very, very good to witness. So, like I said, over in the exhibit, Axel and Grayson were great, and I started with them. I started and I sent Rika through with Abby and Krista and Kelly. Kelly was outside with me, so Abby, Krista, and Jackie and Jess were inside to manage the pups and Rika. And I stayed with Axel and Grayson, trying to give them distractions in case they were upset about Rika being separated. And then Kelly was helping me with the shoots. And they weren't. I mean, they were really good about all of this event. And so that allowed me to come in and help manage the excitement that we call puphood. And that worked out quite well. So then we let Rika out. We had to manage the shoot. And here's Kaz trying to cache something in the wood chips. He's caching one of the, who knows, they eat so many caches. Um, that it's hard to even measure what food they're getting right now because they're constantly finding things. And the other day I had Rika in for something else. Pups were in the yard, and I let Rika in. I can't remember what I was doing with her, but then she brought chicken in. Oh yeah, I was washing the windows, and Rika's a hose biter. So I opened up the pack holding area, let all the wolves in. Grayson and Axel are fine with hoses. Rika bites them. So I let Rika kind of explore. Well, she goes and finds a piece of chicken from the exhibit and then carries it in to the pack holding area where the pups were. So, there's definitely a nurturing, caregiving component to Rika's DNA. The all wolves DNA, the way I see it. So, Carrie asked, Blackstone's consuming Rika's regurgitation. Does this make a bond between these two
Water?
that isn't unique to
Sure.
her and Kaz, or is it just a fact what happened in the encounter?
Not.
Um, we tried to just take a bowl of Rika's regurgitation from the exhibit and give it to both of them. Neither one of them ate it when it was just served in a bowl. But again, this morning, Blackstone seemed a lot more needy. He seemed a lot more, this was a little more anxiety for him. And so I think the comfort, the warmth of it, because it just came right out of Rika, made him more stimulated to eat. So I think it may not be a stronger bond. It just may need, and it may end up with a stronger bond because it did with Grayson and being needed Aiden and being bonded with Aiden, and Rika needing support being bonded to Grayson. There certainly might be something more. Blackstone does need a little bit more support and is going to end up with a tighter bond with Rika because he needs it. So we'll watch and see how that happens. But Kaz is pretty confident and pretty comfortable, and whereas, like I said, Blackstone is not as much. Even for the wolf care staff, Blackstone is the one who's maybe lying on the table and has one of the wolf care hands under his chin as a pillow. If he gets a piece of food that he can't defend, he runs to the lap of the wolf care staff and lays in their lap. This morning, if you happen to watch the pup cams, he and Kaz just about lost it over a beaver tail on Kim Wheeler's lap. So it was pretty intense. So, like I said, and the whole time here, Reich is in this small area. She feels very comfortable about it. Again, she likes John. She loves those visits. But more importantly, she's very comfortable with that environment because she spent a lot of time in that wolf care center. She knew it. She was very comfortable. These pups are the same way. So not only is this going to help us in this introduction, and there's one of the bison hide antlers from the enrichment group that came, the Working for Wolves enrichment group. But I also have some moose liver here, which is one of the favorite things for the wolves. We had a roadkill moose, and the pups love that moose liver. But it is important for long-term management. This is where Grizzer's final days were spent, in this pack holding area and into the wolf care center.
Yep.
So if they're comfortable as pups, I always say fast forward 15 years,
Yep.
when we really need to have that trust. And that trust is what helps us make those end of life decisions and make it as comfortable as possible for those older animals.
Oh
So
my God.
everything that we do here, we think long term, how is this best for the animal, towards those end of life decisions, towards retirement, towards health and medical surgeries or things like that we need. So that's kind of what the morning was like. So a lot of camera bouncing around, but it's very hard to keep track of pups when they're running around. So then what I did was, the wonderful thing about our facility, I don't have to have her near the pups in order to let her out. I have another adjoining gate so the pups can stay separate. She can go through the vestibule, and she is going to be able to go back out in the exhibit. And here, like I said, the pups are, it's they're not fixated on her. They're not obsessed with her. That's why I think tomorrow's check, when she gets to try this again, and Friday's check, are going to be better, and that's going to create a less chaos of running when they finally get to the exhibit. I mean, there'll still be some chaos, but not as much as what we just witnessed today. And that's the key to Axel. Axel is going to react to, he's a high energy, high intense wolf, and he's going to react to a lot of chasing. So the more I can get this out of their system, the better. So then Rika tries to come out. The boys are waiting. That's Grayson waiting at the chute, and no aggression, just waiting to see Rika and nose to nose with Rika and a tail wag. But we needed to get her out of the chute so she didn't feel trapped in there. So a bucket of distractions, 3 or 4 wolf care staff move over and help Rika get out of the chute and be able to go back in the exhibit. And it'd been a real calm day in the exhibit. I did a program at 4 o'clock. We had a little bit of Axel growling at the pups. Rika immediately came over with Grayson. Both of them hackles at Axel. If he growls at those pups or he chases those pups or grabs those pups, both Rika and Axel are defending them. And so we've been seeing that since they've happened. And so that's why I want to make sure if I could get some of this pup exuberance out of them by letting them have Rika time, that's going to help significantly. So that's kind of what I wanted to share with you. Like I said, it doesn't have a lot to do with the full moon, or maybe it does because today's a full moon. Maybe this was all just about puppies in a lunar cycle. I'm not really sure, but it was. It's been a long day. It's been an interesting day, and certainly we're pretty happy with where we're at. So, like I said, what I want to do is I'm going to share a couple more things, and I'm going to keep the screen on right now and see if the pups are around. Nope. Let me just quick check on the exhibit pack and see what they're up to. Normally, if the pups are in the yard, they're kind of around. But when the pups go for the afternoon and go to back to the pack holding area, then the adults are kind of do their own thing. So there's Axel and Grayson. Don't know where Rika is, but if it's buggy, chances are she's probably under the eaves in the wood chips to get away from the bugs. She is a product of being born in a drought. She doesn't care much for insects. Oh, there she is. She's on top of the pump house, right up there. So she's not much of a fan of black flies, gnats, sandflies, or mosquitoes. She was born in a drought year when we didn't have a lot of moisture. So those are the kind of bugs that come out with moisture. She was a wolf pup who was born when yellow jackets were everywhere. She was probably had hundreds and hundreds of yellow jackets where she was stung. And I don't think I've seen a yellow jacket yet this year. With the flooding that we had, yellow jackets are ground nesters, and I don't think we saw any this year. So we're pretty interesting to see what pups are conditioned to at their young age and how that influences their life when they're a little bit older. So let me get to some questions and see if I can kind of address some things for people while you're watching basically wolves sleep, and see if I can address anything. So Keith asked, what did Grayson and Axel make of this on the other side of the fence? So I think I kind of showed you that. They were actually quite indifferent to it. But of course, I gave them lamb chops as well. But for Grayson, especially, I went in early and tried to reassure him that things were going to be, okay, and greeted him. So it's an interesting bond that Grayson and I have. And there's a lot of times when Grayson gets worked up about things. But if I go in with him, whether it be somebody on a ladder, whether it be somebody shoveling the roof, whether it be strangers at the pup yard, if I can reassure him, he seems to deal with it. And so because I went in right away before any of this happened, I went in and greeted him. I gave him some lamb chops. We talked. I don't know. I talked. He didn't listen. But basically, it was a pretty calm check. And then we started doing things. And I stayed with him while Rika went away. And I stayed with him until I saw the chaos of running and Rika getting chased. And then I came in to try to help calm things down. But that helps. So anytime you plan an event with a wolf, you better make sure that they're calm before it starts. Because if you let them ramp up in their brain, if their brains are at a really high energy level and you introduce something that's going to be stimulating, they're going to be through the charts, off the charts, intense. So I start with calm energy, and then I introduce a little bit of chaos. That's better than starting with chaos and introducing more chaos. So Robert asked, how did Grayson and Axel treat her when she was back with them? And I think you saw that. Grayson was waiting there, nose to nose greeting. They did quite well. And as you can see here, it's actually, I think, calmer. Rika doesn't seem as focused at the fence. Normally she'd been over there whining. She's regurgitated through the fence multiple times. She seems to be focused on them. After today and throughout the day, I wasn't doing a lot of pup programs because I was kind of in doing this video stuff. But I didn't see her nearly as much at the fence. When I did my 4 o'clock check, she really was not focused on the pups like she had been. So I really think that was beneficial for her to not be obsessed. And I really wanted to make sure, because I lived through Luna, I was the one who pulled Luna off of Axel. I did not want to see her in that level of obsession about pups. And so what today did was prove to me in my heart that we're not in a circumstance like we have with Luna. And that was very important for me to know, to be able to go on a little bit farther. So, yes, the question is, did Rika need a serious nap afterwards? Yeah, not only did Rika, but the pup slept. I mean, every program we did today, it was like, how do we get the pups to actually stand up for a pup program? They slept. Of course, they also had their rabies or their parvo vaccination. They had their vaccination after they were done with Rika. But and that can also make them tired, but they certainly aren't tired now. So let me just skip to cameras. They're rammy as ever in the pack holding area. So it looks to me like they're causing a ruckus for Kim, trying to, there we are. So they're not tired, that's for sure. Or they had their nap and they feel pretty good about it. So Debbie asked, what is the plan for the 4-year rotation, 4 years from Riker, 4 years from these pups? I think that's a lot of things to have to decide. We need to see where Axel and Grayson's health is. There also is likely going to be, again, a transition or a successional plan for a new curator to come in to be able to work with the team. So when we do decide pups, it's a multitude of issues. Again, if Axel and Grayson get retired, so 4 years from Rika would be 2025, and so they would be 9. We have had 9-year-olds retire before. Obviously, Bolt's declined at 9, and we lost him to degenerative myelopathy. We lost Kiana at 6 with a heart condition. We lost Luna to cancer at 7. Malik retired at 9. Shadow retired at 10. Mackenzie and Lakota and Lucas all retired at 9. So when I look at the past patterns of wolves, between that 9 and 10 is very problematic, from the standpoint of medical issues and behavioral issues where wolves might need to retire. So I would say that in the next 2 years, we're going to have to really assess the health of Axel and Grayson. Now, the good thing is they're up for a USDA vet draw, blood draw. So probably next spring, they're going to have a complete medical exam that includes blood work. We'll be able to see a witness of anything that's, maybe a little bit more problematic, and then be able to help the team form that decision. So this is a team that works on management. So Jen Westland has been as an employee for the center. Then after she went to Bear Head State Park, continued to work for us. Jess Edberg, same thing, was an employee and is now the executive director of the Dorothy Moultrie Museum, continues to work. Sherry Jokinen has been with us since Shadow Malik as a volunteer. Emily Moen has been since 2004. Kelly Godfrey and Raspberry, we go on and on with this wolf care team. There's people that have been here, for 20 some years, and they carry with them that knowledge to help make the best decision possible for the pups. And Kim donates a month of her time every summer. Kim Loomis was just here. Again, just dedication beyond belief to the people that are caring for these wolves, and they're going to help form that decision. So Wendy says, while Rika was in with the pups this morning, how was Axel and Grayson reacting? I think I kind of covered that with being very calm. Later the day, I saw some Axel antics, but it's nothing different than what I've been seeing before, where he gets a little bit of dominance from Rika, and he goes to redirect the pups by a snap and a growl, and then I make it apparent to him that I try to kind of help block him, and then Rika and Grayson actually today came over and were very dominant over him. So Valerie asked, "Are you concerned about Rika's smaller stature, cold winter, warm spring, hot summer?" And now she's regurgitating for the pups. Are these all contributing factors to her may not be up to the weight expected? Well, certainly the cold winter was, although what's interesting is I just had, I'm participating in a study, and I know I'll never be able to find it, but I think I'll add it to the archive. I'm participating in a study with a gentleman who is comparing dog growth rates to wolf pup growth rates, and he graphed Axel and Grayson's growth rate and against Rika's, and Rika's actually right in. It's a mirror graph of Rika and Grayson, and growing in the same kind of patterns. Yeah, certainly if she's regurgitating food, we obviously know that she's losing it, but we're feeding. I mean, we're feeding. Even today, I see there's 10 pounds of bone dust on the counter and 15 pounds of chicken. We fed 2 beavers yesterday. We've got a deer fawn going in on Saturday. Rika's stature, and keep in mind, a lot of people are saying, "Oh, she's so much smaller." Rika was 81 pounds. Luna was 79 pounds when she was a year of age. Luna became a 112-pound female. Granted, some of that was in retirement, which had a lot to do with a little bit of her restricted movements, but they can still put on weight. And so also so small because all of her hair is in a bag. We shed it. She shed out her hair. We brushed it. We're waiting for it to be sent down to our weavers and spinners here. So it is smaller than what I had hoped. Her mom was 115. But the other thing that we talked about was that her mom was 13. And we know that there's probably something and she was a single pup in a litter. There may be something related to an older female whelping, and that may have a contributing factor. We don't know all the variables, but we definitely know we had a cold winter. We definitely know that it takes a lot of BTUs to be able to get through winters here in northern Minnesota. But I also know, and another example was Maya. Maya was, I believe, 85 at a year, so a little bit bigger than Rika, and I think Maya's max weight. She was 85 when she passed away, but I think her adult weight was like 95 pounds. So I could say that Rika could probably put on another 5 or 10 pounds in the next year and really be able to meet her biologic potential, which is not quite what her mom would be, but certainly I think 90 to 100 pounds is not out of the realm of possibility. So Jane asked, how do the pups and basically all of them react to thunder, and where are they during tornado warnings? We're fortunate here in northern Minnesota. Tornadoes are very, very rare here. We are thankful to Canada for the cold air that it delivers to us. And so we don't have many tornado warnings. If we do happen to have a tornado watch, meaning the conditions might be right for a tornado to form, we have the medical pen, we have pack holding area, we have dens. The dens are buried concrete septic tanks, so that's probably the safest place for them to be. They have no problem with thunder. As you saw with 4th of July, they had a little bit of getting used to that because that was such a kind of a loud loud sound, but some of our thunder sounds like that as well. So these pups have been through a lot of thunderstorms. When they were younger, we did bring them into the building because they were soaking wet and their guard hairs weren't very well developed, but we're now seeing guard hairs, and the guard hairs are the long hairs that are dictating their color. And so you'll see that those guard hairs come into play, and Kaz especially is getting very, very dark. The other thing to notice here, Kaz is very bulky. I mean, he's kind of he looks much more muscular, where Blackstone is kind of long and thin, and that's Blackstone coming out of that Wolf Care Center there. So a couple of other questions, and then I'll kind of I've got a few more things that I wanted to share. Just a couple of images that I wanted to share, but Deborah asked, would we be able to get any information on how the other days meetings will go with Rika and the pups? Yes, if things go well, tomorrow or Friday, I produce a YouTube video, which I do once a week for the center. I hope that the YouTube will then be able to share day 2, day 3, and see the progression with the facility. So Valerie asked, what will the improvement be in honor of Denali? Denali and Grizzer we're both working on the same improvement for the two of them. And I'll switch to that here in a second. I think if you recall, Denali's favorite place was the top of this east side den. So Grizzer and Denali would come through this gate here, and this is the transition area. This is where they slept. And we have a little issue. Anyone who knows snow, especially snow in northern Minnesota with metal roofs, you can see the edge of this roof line here. And what happened was that when snow piled up, it would all slide on top of this den. I don't know that I could find it right now, but this den was buried in the snow this winter to the point it wasn't even usable. So in honor of Denali and Grizzer, we want to try to fix the problem we have with this snow slide so it stops sliding on the den in retirement. And it didn't impact Grizzer too much because Grizzer always slept in the transition area. But certainly if Denali would have been alive, this was his favorite place to lie down. Denali had passed away in September. And so we were having issues with that this winter. And so we, in honor of those two, are working on that. It's going to take us a little while. We actually just had some trees removed for another medical pen. And that other medical pen is in honor of this guy. So Boltz was a great plant subspecies. He ended up with a really unusual, rare diagnosis of degenerative myelopathy that we'd never seen in wolves before. Boltz, towards the end of his life, losing mobility in his back legs caused him really to panic. He was really vulnerable. He didn't want to be in the front, didn't want to be weak in front of the other pack members. And so right now I'm working on his legacy project, which is building a new medical pen. We've got it all funded. Everything's good to go. I'm just waiting on contractors. But what's interesting in building Boltz's legacy medical pen, we had to take out some hazard trees that would have fallen on the pen, white pines with blister rust. And for Denali and Grizzer's legacy, those trees are going to be saved, and the college forestry program is going to mill them up. And the trees from Boltz's legacy are going to be used to honor Denali and Grizzer's legacy. So a very sustainable project here, working with the local college. And so in addition to managing pups, a lot of my job is managing projects. And so that's kind of what's going on. So it has been a busy year between the chance of doing pup programs in this pup yard, making sure that Rika is in fact getting all the resources necessary as a 1-year-old, and then making sure that these 2022 pups have, kind of the care that they need. And here they are, like I said, in the Wolf Care Center. Staff is with them all night long, and making sure that they're safe and they don't get themselves into trouble. And that is a big industrial fan that's on the outside. They can't get to it, but it blows the mosquitoes back out the door. So that's the kind of the tough love. And I think Maureen, you had talked about this, the importance of making sure that we let the pups have some time so that they don't get, kind of like, get to the new exhibit and don't have any toys, don't have any blankets, don't have any beds, whatever. Sunday is the cutoff day. So today and this next couple of days, they'll have fun in the Wolf Care Center. But after Sunday, on the 17th, that's kind of my, 10-day. Now you need to recognize what it's like living outdoors. As you can see here, we need to do this because they're wrecking the place. It's definitely time. And that keeps the wolf care staff very busy to try to keep the pups from destroying the blankets. And so they have things that are distractions, and then just send them right back out the door. And this is where they'll be staying. So they'll have a den, which is where he's going right now. That's wood chips. They have a covered area underneath that's right next to the adults. So they could certainly sleep next to the adults if they want to. Those are all things that will keep them occupied. So, all right. So, Debbie asked, are you doing any body work with any of the wolves now? Yes. Pups are already introduced, and that is a part of their daily routine. Terry asked, why do they regurgitate? Regurgitation is the way that the adult wolves feed pups. So in the wild, if you make a kill of a beaver or a deer, you're not going to carry that deer back to the pups, who are limited in their ability to be traveling with the adults. So the adults gorge. They'll eat up to 20% of their body weight in their stomach. They'll carry it back to the pups. The pups lick the side of the adult's face and they regurgitate. So that's how they're fed. And it is certainly an efficient method to be able to carry large amounts of food back to pups that are in a vulnerable state. So thank you, Maureen, for the comment. Glad to hear Rika and Grayson will manage to keep Axel in check. I was really impressed with the two of them today. And the educators have been saying that Grayson and Rika are back to sleeping close to each other. They're back in some of that pair bonding moment. They actually even thought they saw a parallel gate going across the enclosure earlier this week. So I think hormones are really kicking in. The idea that these pups are coming in soon, I think has really helped. And having Rika's experience today, I think it's really going to trigger her to be quite a bit more pair bonded with Grayson. So Kelly Jackson asked, how is it going conditioning the pups to ignore the scat bucket? Yeah, that's been going fine. I think these pups are very smart. They have really no challenges right now. Being a little bit interested in grabbing things. We're working on dominance. Grayson will do most of that once he gets them in his possession. So I think Tricia has a few more, and I think I can kind of cover them. If you need to log off, that's fine. I will archive this and send this out in hopefully by early next week. So Tricia asked, what if Axel is not as welcoming to the pups as Rika and Grayson are? Well, we know from experience, and let me do this because I think this was really worthwhile taking a look at. I'm going to stop sharing. And what I want to share with you is I want you to see Rika's first day. And so Rika's first day, and let me share this with you. First of all, she was only 23 pounds. So when Rika was introduced, she was little. She was little puppy. So if Axel becomes too possessive or too redirecting to the pups, I don't think he'll get an opportunity, because I think Rika and Grayson will continue to guard them. That's what they've been doing. That's what Aiden did for Grayson. That's what Shadow did for, this is going on since we started. But Rika's introduction, like I say, she was smaller. She was only 23 pounds. Axel was a little hard on her, and Grayson blocked her, or Grayson blocked him. And so there's Axel kind of following her around, and here comes Grayson, and Grayson's keeping an eye on her, and you can see he stops, and there's a communication going on there that we do not see, but the wolves understand and the wolves know. So based on what I saw today, I have no concern whatsoever about Grayson having the ability to stop that interaction of Axel being aggressive. The other thing too, like I said, we've got open spots. Medical pen is open. We're going to leave the pack holding area open. There's multiple staff. And the other thing too, is we have, what do we have? Probably 5 or 6 days where we'll have staff 24 hours a day. We're trying to pull together a behavioral team. If you've been contacted about being on the behavioral team, I hope to get an email out tomorrow. I want to see how things go with Rika tomorrow to make sure that, we're on target at the right date. but there'll be people watching. And like I said, you see a dedicated group of people here that made sure this little pup was safe. And that's Axel there. Um, and, they're going to do the same. Also, take a look at pups. Rika is very astute at being able to defend her own food. And our job, again, was to block her and kind of protect her. So, question is, um, do you brush the pups so they can get used to it? Yes. We not only brush, we have done gloves, we have done a lot of training. Not really training, but a lot of conditioning of things that they're going to get used to throughout their entire life. So, scat buckets, wheelbarrows, weed eaters, chainsaws. Those are our list of things to do. The one thing that we will not, um, and that we're working on right now, Kelly just brought up, is we need to bring out the snow rake. The snow rake, which is about 9 feet tall, can be usually intimidating. So we won't be able to rake any roofs. Because we don't want to put metal on metal and make that noise, but we will at least get it out, put it together, clunk around with it, and make them, let them investigate it, because that is a big part of what we have to do. So right now, the charge to the wolf care team this morning was, all right, let's think about everything that Rika was afraid of at her introduction that we missed, and let's make sure that these pups have it. So that's really important. Suzanne asked, how have most IWC introductions been done in the mornings rather than afternoons? And does time of day matter? Yes, the time of day matters because we want to visually be able to see what's going on. So if we do it too late in the day and it gets dark here, by August, we're getting dark by 9 o'clock at night. Then it's a lot of things can ramp up in the middle of the night when we can't see. We have a very vegetative enclosure, extremely thick with vegetation in this exhibit pack. If you look up the hill, we can lose a puppy up here and not be able to see what's going on. Everything's wired with microphones, so we can kind of hear what's going on. But for us to see it, the more time on daylight, the better. Now, with that said, with Rika having this first pup introduction done, we're 2 or 3 meetings. If I can swing it where Grayson can come in with Rika next week, and if I could even swing it where Axel can come in, so it's not a new meeting, I will certainly do that. Then I could get away with doing an introduction later in the day. So early in the morning, they're pretty ramped up, so there's a lot more running. Later in the day, like 4 o'clock, is kind of the ideal time because it's pretty hot, and they're usually not as active. So here we have an Ely siren that just came on, and I'm not sure if you can hear that. Make sure that I turn my speaker up here. So that was an Ely siren. They might start to howl. It's hard to say. So that was an Ely siren. They might start to howl. It's hard to say. Okay. So last couple of questions. Maureen's comments. Rika's personality and intelligence certainly makes up for her smaller size. I would agree completely. And Maya, like I said, when I think about Maya as a previous female who was quite a bit smaller, nobody messed with Maya. There's no doubt. So Andy asked, what do you think that the pup's colors will end up being based on what they look like now? I really thought that Kaz would be lighter. His mom was very light. His dad was kind of darkish, sandy gray. But boy, Kaz's guard hairs are coming in really dark. So I think we're going to have some light facial colorations. But I think, and there's Kaz right there, stalk and ambush. But I think we're going to see probably both of them be a darker saddle, a lot like Bolts, I think. So, all right. I am going to wrap up there. And this is the den that, again, we put wood chips. Thank you, Andy, for those donations. But we put wood chips in here so that they had a comfortable place to rest with the wood chips. And it was associated with the confinement of the den because that's where they want to sleep. So thank you so much. And I will continue to keep you posted. And we will have remote observers and Bill and Deb, they have not been contacted yet. I will talk to Abby when she gets in. Abby's got a couple of days off with her family visiting. And then on Monday, Abby and I will convene about the virtual team. I am going to be coordinating the on-site team. So if you've been contacted for the on-site team, I will make those announcements by email. Hopefully tomorrow. I'm going to wait and see what happens with Rika to come up with a plan. And Becky says, how big do you think they will get weight-wise? That's a great question. I would say over 100 pounds. Right now, they're tracking with Aiden, meaning Aiden's weight, and we track everybody's weight. Aiden was 129 pounds. I suspect those guys will be all of that based on how they're growing right now. So thank you for watching, and thanks for putting up with some running puppies and some shaky video, and watch the YouTube channel. I hope to have, I'll probably wait till Friday afternoon to produce the YouTube so I can include tomorrow and Friday's Rika introduction. I'll just kind of do stages so you can see how things change. So thanks for watching. Appreciate everybody's support. This is certainly not normal for us to do 2 pup years in a row. It is exhausting for people, but it is well worth it for us to see these pups flourish the way that they are. So thank you again. We'll see you next time.